Good morning and cheers. This morning I am attempting to drink gas station coffee. It's not bad, but it's not great. So anyway, it's drinkable. So today will be a shorter session because I have a call coming up and it's kind of a roundup, and let's just get started. So I am setting up a home network lab to learn how to work with, learn how to use pfSense, open source free firewall. And so I bought a little appliance after playing around with the VM and seeing it make sense. I bought a little appliance to test. I'm doing a physical network lab. And in order to make that kind of real, I grabbed an old laptop that had just been wiped and refreshed with Windows and plugged it in. So it had nothing on it in terms of applications. And so I was trying to just get by with basic Windows stuff, but it's just not practical because I was setting up passwords, doing configuration. I need to write things down. I needed to save things. I had no tools, no files, no OneDrive, nothing on there on the laptop. So I realized just the bare minimum stuff that I needed to function in that environment was a password manager. Not only did I need to still log into a few things from this laptop within the test network, but I also needed to record the configuration, the passwords, the settings, and whatever API keys or whatever else I was recording or needed to write down for this new pfSense firewall. So I needed a password manager. Like it wasn't remotely practical for me to get anything done without it. I'm so dependent upon password managers, and I record everything there. It doesn't matter which password manager you're using. Like just, Google top 10 password managers, pick one, good enough, whatever one you like. It doesn't really matter. I've been using RoboForm for, I don't know, well over 15 years, if not longer, before many others even existed. So that's why I'm using it. I looked at others, there's just zero reason for me to switch. There's no value offered by the other ones that RoboForm doesn't have, but it doesn't really matter. Pick one, use it. If you're not using a password manager, highly recommend it. And it's not just for passwords, it's for notes and, client information and configuration. All my family stuff is in there. It's like all my bank information or technical support information is in there. So when I call my credit card processing gateway and for my merchant account, I can tell them I reset my password on August 15th. Why is my account locked out? I literally had to do that last week. And so I have all the documentation of everything I'm doing on my accounts in there. So it's very, very handy. So the second thing I had a hard time doing without, because I was trying to document things and submit forum posts and work with pfSense, was a screenshot tool. And there is the snippet or whatever tool in Windows, But if you've ever used Snagit and if you've ever gotten used to the features it has, like it's I stopped using any other photo editing tool. I used to have Photoshop or one of those tools for photo editing. And so it has become my comprehensive image management, screenshot management, you name it, tool. I do all sorts of crazy stuff with it. So I had to install it on this laptop. Now, in the replies, everyone's replying to my tweet with their preferred tool, and that's great. So there's apparently there's an open source free tool called Greenshot that a few people use. Some people use other tools, and that may be great. I think I've heard of that once before. I'm just so invested in Snagit, it doesn't it's trivial for me to. If I had to purchase it, I happened to get a free copy through the MVP program, but I purchased it for many, many years before that. The other one that I was kind of surprised by where people were saying they had text editors, which I totally get, but in this environment, I was doing networking, and so Notepad was fine for my purposes, but I use Ultra Edit and Notepad++, and I think a few people use slightly different text editors. They consider that essential. And then for installing apps, people were saying, well, just use the automated tool like Chocolatey or Nine Night or even Portable Apps. And I've heard of those before. Now, I looked into them again, and I don't think they would offer me much benefit because, one, there are only a few apps that I use in their lists of supported or listed applications that are already prepackaged. So it's like installing Chrome, and for me, that's like trivial. That's the least of my worries. I don't use many of the others. Most of the stuff I use is paid software. Apparently you can package them up, but then you've packaged up a version, and so I wouldn't be getting the latest version, and I'd have to manage those packages, just a whole nother layer of overhead. So those options, those automation tools don't appear to be really valuable for me, but a lot of people seem to use them for a lot of the free and open source apps. So two examples of Snagit. I was able to make my healthy food pyramid with nachos in just a few minutes. And so this is some of the crazy stuff that I can do with Snagit. And so I can easily manipulate an image, change screenshots when I do mock-ups, and rearrange fields. I make images much more compact, like by clipping out stuff that is wasted space and consolidating it in order to send screenshots to customers so they're more readable. So I do a ton of image manipulation with screenshots and mock-ups, and it is a full-on graphics and photo editing and image editing tool for me. It's far, far more than just screenshots for me. And then also another thing I've relied on frequently nowadays is the library, the screenshot library. So as long as you've had Snagit installed on a given machine, you could probably port the images over, but I can go back years on this machine and see the over 9,000 images that I haven't deleted in screenshot. So I'm able to go back weeks and find a screenshot that I took weeks ago, and I regularly have to do that. I was like, okay, wait a minute, what day was that? Or I think it was last week and I did this, and I went back and grabbed it. And I actually did that for my last live stream. I had done a live stream on the just one field, and I had a graphic. I was able to go back like 4 months or whatever that was, find that image, update it to just change a few words on it, and reuse it. So a very, very handy library feature that I use regularly to pull old screenshots that I've taken. So once you become reliant upon these features and utilize them regularly, it's like, they have value. So I'm happy to pay for tools like this that save me time. Next note, cloud. Cloud SaaS services and the endless debate of on-prem versus cloud. Now, having worked in the on-prem ERP world for the last 17 years, I have, I've lived it, and it is it can be handy, it can be convenient, but it has downsides, particularly in the low to mid market, small to mid market ERP space in the US at least. So a company has 10 employees and maybe they have 5 ERP users. They have no on-site full-time IT admin. They have no one to maintain their servers. It's not ideal. And I can guarantee you that backups are not being done properly. They're not being monitored. The server isn't being maintained, and it's just a mess. So for those customers, I think cloud is a no-brainer. And so the rebuttal to that is, well, what about this downtime? Look at this incident where BC had an outage. Yes, it happens. But as we see here, it was noticed around 1:13 a.m. Pacific, so I think that's around 9 a.m. Central Eastern Standard Time or summertime, whatever, CEST. And so it was noticed, yes, outages happen, but they're on it. They're on it right away. If they don't notice it right away through their telemetry, which they probably do, you can submit a support case and they'll be on top of it. It's a tier 1 or level 1 or code red outage. And so they jump on it. And so Frank here is giving the heads up. It's like, hey, we're working on it. West Europe, we're aware of it. We're on it. And by 2:45 a.m. my time, roughly 11:45, about an hour and 45 minutes later, they have a fix, or it was resolved, whatever the issue was. We don't know what the issue was, but it sounds like it was due to an underlying Azure subsystem or Azure service. There was some outage for that service in Western Europe. And most of the time lately, the last several incidents with Business Central have not been due to Business Central at all. It's been due to an unrelated dependency in the Azure ecosystem. So DNS, authentication, storage, those are the ones that I remember. Like I think there's been one of each in the last year. And so, yeah, ultimately it does affect Business Central, but the outages have generally been short, so less than 2 hours, like in this case. So, let's say that happens 2 or 3 times a year. Let's say 4 times a year, once a quarter. They're doing the backups for you. They're doing the maintenance. They're doing the support. The trade-off for many, many organizations, I think, is worth it. It makes sense. Yes, you will have outages. Just set that expectation and don't expect to have 100% infallible uptime, right? Just say, hey, customer, you have 5 users. Just be aware. Occasionally, there is some hiccup in Azure. You may have an hour of downtime. Grab a coffee, take a break, do some emails, do something else. Great. It is unfortunate when there is an Office 365 or broader outage that affects Office 365, Outlook, Business Central, OneDrive, CRM, everything. That's unfortunate. So that's when you go take a walk or, have a team meeting or something. But those are infrequent. And so I think the risk reward for most organizations is you benefit. And as we discussed in the Twitter threads, there are scenarios where you absolutely have 24/7, 365 organizations, manufacturing, just crazy transaction throughput, and other situations where on-prem makes sense. And it's not just the web potential outages. Internet outages, cloud outages. There are many other factors that play into that. If typically that's a larger organization with on-site IT, an entire team, you have redundant infrastructure, great. If that makes sense to spend that money, totally. But for 80+% of organizations, if not more, I'd say the cloud is a good deal, especially given the price. It's hard to beat. And so you just say, hey, we are going to have occasional outages. They are on it. And hey, we don't have to pay a couple $100,000 for the staff, equipment, infrastructure, and processes to support this. So I'm willing to accept that downtime. So I've made that choice personally, and I'm fine with it. So when my backup provider sends an tweet says, hey, we noticed an outage, you may notice a problem, cool, just let me know. I'm totally fine with that. BC troubleshooting guide. And I'm wondering, has anyone used this? Oh, I apologize. I have not had chat up. It's been a busy morning. Has anyone used the BC troubleshooting guides? Oh, it's making me log in. One moment. Have a sip of coffee while I deal with this. Restream. Okay. Oh my gosh. Select all images with crosswalks. Really? Can you see this? Okay, help me out here. That's a freeway. It's a driveway. Oh, now I need to click on the new images. Okay, we done? Thank you. Anyway. Okay, so BC troubleshooting guides. Kenny posted a tweet with the some new sample. Oh, the BC samples repo has been updated with a troubleshooting guide for app source validations. So on GitHub under the BC Tech repository, and there's the URL there, there are some neat Jupyter notebooks. I haven't used them yet, so I'm curious if anyone else has used them. And it has Jupyter notebooks that I believe have embedded Custo query language queries to query against application insights. And the new troubleshooting guide includes app source validations. So I'm going to check that out since I just submitted something to AppSource and we did have one failure due to the automated check. And we were able to check that pretty easily, but it would be interesting to see what the troubleshooting guide pulls up. So anyway, just wanted to make you aware of that. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess not too many people have used those yet. So try application insights for either your BC tenants or your AppSource apps, and then try the troubleshooting guides. So check it out. And you may have noticed that some chatter is occurring for BC 2021 Wave 2, I think, yep, and that is version 19. And so the tweets are coming out where people are finding some new features and interesting stuff. So follow the MSDine365BC Twitter account. There are some updates coming out on the Twitter account. And I have noticed that both Shinichi and Yunchu are both tweeting about this. They're finding some new features. And from what I could tell, version 19, I'm assuming they're finding these through the BC Insider Docker containers. I haven't checked to see how else you can get this, if it's available through a SaaS sandbox or what, but my BC Insider, let's see. I just rebuilt it. So my BC Insider is version 19, and I am seeing some slightly different UI elements. So I'll be checking it out. But let me know if there's another way to get the version 19. I haven't really thought about it yet. But anyway, that is that. If you missed the conversation that I had with Jeremy and Henrik, gosh, was it a week ago? I don't even remember. Time flies. Jeremy has created this website with a super cool retro theme of Cronus CAL rules review. And you can actually click on those old school Windows client buttons, and it navigates you through a very retro Windows 3.1 help style website that has the old CAL documentation. So whether you want to check that out for nostalgia or as a reference to see how certain things were done, to see how you might do them in AL, definitely give that a check. And I think I have finally figured something out. I have been using VS Code on my Docker server with, it's a Windows Server 2019 with Docker Enterprise and VS Code. And that's where I've been doing my Docker containers, my VS Code AL development. And I've noticed some weird behaviors in VS Code. And I was like, hey, I couldn't figure out what it is. My terminal window here will be blank when I'm doing things, when there should be something. And just weird behavior when I try to do builds or debugs. Well, I've recently been trying to work with Azure Functions, and I normally would use full Visual Studio with Azure Functions, but I figure, okay, I've got just VS Code on this server. Let me see if I can survive with just VS Code. It's actually a very different experience developing Azure Functions than with full Visual Studio. But I fought through it, spent several hours figuring out all the quirks, but it was still really weird. I couldn't figure out why it wasn't working. And in the terminal window here, it would just be blank. And this is an edited screenshot using Snagit. I've cut out all the blank space in order to get these two sections to appear properly. It would start Azure Functions Core Tools, then it would scroll down and be completely blank. And only after I terminated or scrolled around could I find this section down below. And I was like, what is going on? Well, I didn't even see this yet, but I figured, okay, let me see if like Cylance is my antivirus, anti-malware, endpoint protection I use on all my machines. So I decided to modify Cylance to essentially disable its protection temporarily. I changed what's called the profile, I think it is, and put it in a read-only profile so it doesn't mess with anything. And that's when I noticed this. I was like, okay, PowerShell. So Cylance has a feature called script control that is very, very stringent on Windows script host or PowerShell or any of the scripting engines. And it basically says, nope, you are not going to run anything via PowerShell, because PowerShell is one of the #1 exploit vectors for Windows malware and ransomware and attacks against Windows hosts. So the #1 thing you would do to improve security on a Windows endpoint is to disable or block PowerShell. And so that's what Cylance does. You can selectively allow certain scripts. And so you essentially like whitelist them or allow them. So I have to do that with my Docker build scripts, my PowerShell scripts that I use to automatically build my Docker scripts. But a lot of applications now, Windows apps, Microsoft apps, are lazily dependent upon PowerShell, so they're constantly running PowerShell scripts, and I see them because Cylance is blocking them. And just a great example of how you wouldn't even know that all these applications are running behind the scenes PowerShell scripts that could potentially be an exploit. So I'm seeing these getting blocked. Normally it's not an issue, but in this case, I suspect PowerShell is being blocked by Cylance, preventing the Azure Functions Core tools from running on my dev server. When I disable script control, everything works fine. When I re-enable Cylance script control, things don't work. So I'm working with my managed security provider in order to figure out how I can allow this, or whether I can, or whether I just have to disable script control, or whether these run under the context of VS Code and I can allow VS Code. I don't know. I need to figure it out. So it is a little bit of a hassle, but I am super paranoid about malware and ransomware and security. So I'm tolerating it and learning in the process. So if you happen to run Cylance, there's a lesson. Interesting, learning all sorts of stuff. And so with that, I have a call coming up. So I'm going to wrap it up and enjoy my gas station coffee here. Works in a pinch, not my preferred coffee. I'm no aficionado, but anyway. So with that, have a good day, and check out the new features of Business Central 19. If you're not part of the Insider program, give it a try, check it out. If you're a partner or developer, you definitely should be part of BC Insider, doing some research on the benefits of that long-term research project. And, have a good day.